Hello, NFT Nation. We're really excited to have you here. You know, there's a lot going on in the NFT space. Maybe we're in a down cycle, and maybe there's been a NFT recession, but frankly, it doesn't look like it. Even if you look at the September numbers, they're way up from June, for example, which was also actually another NFT recession that we said. And then we had a nice bump in July, and yet September, the recession is still up from July. It's just August was insane, and I think we're starting to get back into some of that now. So this is great. I want to welcome you to the first episode here. Scott and I are really excited about doing this because we really like the idea of collaborating and really seeing this as a community. There's a lot of folks out there who are sharks, who are just like lone wolves. They're trying to do NFTs on their own and take advantage. I think they look at it like a zero-sum game. I look at it like an opportunity for it to be a team sport. And that's what we really want to do here is create a team sport. We want to share with you what we're doing. We're hoping over time we'll get people engaged and sharing what they're doing. We're setting up a whole new community around this. We're going to have lots of information, news, and data on the space that we want to provide to folks. And one of the things we're going to try to do is get together each week and just talk to you a little bit about the news, our perspectives on it, and also maybe give you some tips and that will help you become better. And that's ultimately my goal is. I'm on the same journey with you. I've only been in this space collecting for about 6 months. So some of you, I'll be 6 months ahead of you. Many of you, I might be a year behind you, a couple, 3 years behind people like Scott. But I think that's a nice balance that we're going to have going forward in that it's a process of discovery. And you know what? There are some people who know a lot more about this than others in this space. But one of the things I've learned is there aren't really any experts because the space is evolving so quickly. And so this is an opportunity for us all to develop our expertise together. That's the mission, what we're doing. That's what we're doing with Niftorious. We'll talk a little bit about what Niftorious is as we go through this process. But what I really want to do first is introduce Scott Leach. Scott, why don't you tell the people who are watching today a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Scott Leach. I am a product manager most of my career, but really I began as an artist from early on. I went to film school when I graduated high school, was always interested in the arts and especially the places where art and technology kind of meet. That's always been incredibly exciting to me. I got into blockchain first heard about it in 2012, 2013, and was looking at it, but it wasn't until around 2017, 2018 that I actually started participating, first by getting Bitcoin and ETH, and then getting into NFTs. And then I began working with Rally in 2018 and have been there since, I guess, August of 2018, helping to launch the Creator Coin and the Rally Coin and also their NFT product. Yeah, you did an awesome introduction in terms of helping one another out. To me, this is my favorite period of time when a new technology emerges where the potential feels absolutely unlimited, like anything can happen. And it just excites me from a creative perspective. Eventually, we're going to figure out all the use cases. Not all the use cases. We're going to figure it out the way we did with web, and there's going to be stuff that becomes normal. But right now, it's so exciting because everything just feels full of potential, and that really activates the artist in me to want to make strange and wonderful things and get them into the hands of people and share the experience, share the learning process.
Yeah, and I love your background as a creator. Obviously, from the game side on iOS, which the story-based gameplay, which I think is amazing. But I'm going to look forward in the next few weeks of introducing the people who are watching here some of your art because I'm also very impressed with that. And one of the things I really like about this space is it really changes the nature of the opportunities presented to artists, that it becomes something where they don't have to become the website designer who's just slapping up the latest project just so they can pay the bills, but they can actually hone their craft, and they can not only sell work, but they can actually live off of it. And as their reputation improves, the royalty stream coming in from from their growing success in the industry, just makes it to be a viable lifestyle. I mean, how amazing is that we think about all the things technology has done for different parts of the world, different sectors of the of industry. Now we're talking about it touching art in such a way that it makes being a full-time artist a much more viable profession for many, many more people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible. And there are so many digital native artists whose work has been, they make their money, like you said, working on websites, getting jobs on film projects, that sort of thing. All their art might, it might bump to the top of Reddit or something, and they get recognition and credibility, but that doesn't pay the bills. And now they're in a position where they can actually start to build an audience of collectors and build real value around their IP. That's absolutely incredible, and super exciting. I feel like it's a renaissance thing happening, and it sounds cliche or like
It's like the
dramatic to say
Enlightenment.
so. It really is. I really think that's happening. And I think if you're buying NFTs right now, you're essentially buying paintings during the Renaissance. Like
They're
a
the new
lot of this stuff
Medici's.
is going to be, yeah, this stuff is going to be, it's historic. This feels so much to me like late 99 or mid to late 99 internet did. It's
Really? I feel like it's
I mean,
1995.
earlier, but
95 web.
it feels like that potential. Like there's no doubt in my mind that it's inevitable. It's
Yes.
going to happen. We don't know who's going to win and lose, and I believe there's absolutely going to be bubbles, but it's all going to just keep on going. And yeah, it's exciting. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I bring up 95. I was there. I'm old enough to have been there working in the web in 95. And if you think about it, a lot of people think that somewhere around there, the internet started, but the internet had been around for a while. There had been dial-up experiences. There had been Pine and all these message boards and things like that. And I kind of feel like that's where crypto was for many years. And then all of a sudden now we have the graphical user interface. The equivalent of that for this industry. The wallets are much more user-friendly. We have places to see collections. We have places just to go onto a website and easily mint, that normies can do. They don't have to understand necessarily how to mint directly from the contract and Etherscan. So, okay, so that's a good setup, but we shouldn't belabor that today because there's a lot of people who are here today already believe this. So we don't need.
Yes.
We believe this too. I think we'll have opportunity to talk a lot more about this because I think it is transformative and we're in the front end of something significant. The only reason why I bring up the 1995 number is that you're still early. So the people who are watching don't feel like you missed it because you weren't here when Bored Apes were selling for 0.5 ETH. We're at the tip of the iceberg here just based on where this is headed. So that's what I'm really excited about. And that's why we're here today. And that's why we didn't put this off like another week or 2 weeks.
Yes.
Because we've wanted to do this for weeks already. And we feel like we've already missed some of the things we'd love to talk about. So no time like the present. Okay. So here's how we're going to do it. So we're going to try to have a fairly regular show schedule for people watching so that you can be anticipating what's going to come next and what we're going to provide. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll talk a little bit about top story of the week. Then we're going to go through rapid fire on a bunch of different projects that are out there that we thought were notable. And we won't cover them all. And frankly, since this is our first episode, we could go back months and months if we wanted to, but we're actually just going to do stuff that's popped in the last couple of weeks, and going forward, it'll probably be a 7 to 10 day look back. So those are that's the news angle. And then we're going to get into, usually we'll talk about a tip. Today, we're going to talk specifically about what we're buying and what we've bought recently, because I want you to have that perspective. We're going to talk about some things that are in our wallets. I don't want you to think we're just pumping them. It's going to be full disclosure for the types of things that we're talking about today. And there's going to be a number of things that we don't own. So that's also cool. Although you might own everything. We'll get to that in a minute. Scott has a much broader portfolio than I do. So we're going to do that. And then at the end, we'll give you a sense of some things you can do to get involved, because I think we're going to have a lot of fun here. All right, Scott, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. The top story of the week, the top story of this episode, number 1, I want to talk about Twitter. I want to talk about NFT verification. Now, a lot of folks have been talking about this a little bit, but I don't know that it's gotten even enough attention, because I think there's a significant thing here. And what we have is we have a Web 2 giant who is basically saying Web 3 is now going to be part of my future. And if people are following what's going on with Square and Twitter, they'll have an idea that Jack Dorsey really believes in this. And he's trying to become a Web3. He's trying to become at least Web3 friendly, if not a Web3 company. I think if you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he thinks he's going to become a Web3 company. And that's been in the works for several years now. We can talk about that. I'm sure we'll talk about that another time. But I think it's really interesting that some of the giants who dominate Web 2 are putting down a marker and to validate some of the core mechanics, one of the key, probably the second most important product of Web 3 so far. So
yeah,
why don't you outline what you think about it, what's happening?
Yeah. I think it's, when I saw this article, the thing they kept leading with was that you could tip with Bitcoin, which is neat and cool and great. Yep. But the NFT verification, I think, is huge. And there's a few reasons why. You said it. It's a massive. Everyone knows what Twitter is. It's going to educate a lot of people on what NFTs are. In a very specific use case that makes absolute sense. Like, you don't need to understand blockchain or anything. That avatar is a one-of-a-kind thing, and this one person owns it. That's huge in terms of education. Also awareness, right? And then that Twitter, like, regardless of how you use it, it is a sort of platform for status, right? Broadcasting your status. The merit of your voice is based in large part on your credibility, right? Either the size of your audience or who you are. I think these NFTs are going to enable people to gain that credibility in a way that we've not seen before. And I think that that's a huge deal. So there's that piece. And then I can see this whole future where they introduce gating and different forms of broadcasting directly to people that hold certain NFTs or use certain NFTs as their profile pic in Twitter. There's tons of potential there.
Twitter Space is only for certain types of NFT holders, right?
Exactly.
So it's a very logical extension. I would suspect they'll bring that to market first, just based on where they are in this cycle. And what you think about is, what is the product that's being sold when we have an NFT? So previously we've had this idea of art, and that art can be just the aesthetic aspects of it, or it could be the fact that some people are viewing this already as history. So we think about Beeple, we even think about CryptoPunks. It started out as this idea of art, generative art, could be one-off art, whatever it is. And then some people also saying, hey, it's more than just aesthetics, it's also history. So that's another angle. Mm-hmm. What we found that really accelerated the market this summer were two other aspects. One was status, which absolutely is already available. That was the first thing. And then the next thing is the promise of other things. So the promise of community, the promise of utility.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have these different product attributes now associated. We still have art and history. Status is absolutely a thing. And I think what Twitter's doing is they're cementing the status piece. A friend of mine who just bought a Mutant Ape said basically it took him less than a few days to get some status benefits out of it. He was in a clubhouse room. He had no idea what's going on. Someone said something. They saw that he was an ape. They asked him to come up on. You had a mutant ape, not a bored ape, but a mutant ape. Asked him to come up on the stage. And he says, "Like, I really wasn't paying attention." They're like, "No problem. You're a mutant ape. We'll bring you up to speed." Right. And so, he's like, "You've got to." He sends me a note. He said, "You can't believe what just happened." And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly it." And Twitter now putting the imprimatur on that, and Twitter being so important in the crypto and NFT space, I think is really significant.
It's huge. Yeah, it's giant. And I mean, you said it. The people are starting to understand utility in a very specific use case that's easy to explain and understand. And the community thing, I think, is also really big, because it's, if you own a Bored Ape, you know, when you see someone else, you know what it took for you to get that. You either got really lucky and you were in the right place at the right time, and you deserve you want to share that excitement and acknowledgement with someone else who had a similar experience, or you paid a lot of money to get that because it meant something to you.
Right.
There's that community that comes built in. This NFT thing to me is so fascinating as a community building tool, because before now you built communities around pre-existing IP, right? A brand or a product or something that you brought into the world, and you set up a site and built a community around that. This really is building it from the very start of an idea. Someone comes out and says, I have this idea with these drawings of apes. They might have utility. You get the rights to them. We sort of think we want to do these things. We don't really know, but this is our roadmap as of right now. Then the community builds around that, and then they shape and change the roadmap in a way that you can't do if you join, a Nike sneaker community, right? It's an established brand. They have a style guide. They have laws.
Right.
That thing is really cool.
Yeah. So I think of it as, having done this before from the publisher side and the research and data side, I've created a community, but it was really a one-to-many, and then trying to force fit I don't want to say force fit, but trying to cultivate a many-to-many relationship. And that's difficult. It's helpful because there are already people who are organizing around some of the things that we did in the voice and AI space. So we already had an audience, but transitioning an audience to a community is very difficult. And then you also have to be willing to do that. There's a lot of people who have their own audiences and they think they're building community, but really it's still a one-to-many. They haven't really fully embraced this idea that you want other people to be there. And I look at it as the difference between being a leader of a community or a facilitator of a community. And that's what I've tried to reorient myself around in terms of that voice AI space, but specifically in the area of NFTs and Niftorious, which is this sort of new brand and this new activity. It's community first. We're going to have some of those other things. But those are going to be scaffolding or lubricants for interaction. Those are going to be additional value. But I want to be community first because I want it to be participatory.
Exactly, and that's the challenge with one-to-many, is that there's this. In my experience, I love the idea of it, and you start to do it, and there's this golden age when you start the community where everyone is happy and everything works, and then it becomes really, really difficult to be the one trying to manage the many and keep a community aligned and having the same values and wanting the same things and not having everyone fizzle and get disappointed. It's tricky, but this does really facilitate the sort of many to many right off the bat. Everyone has a stake in the game in NFTs, quite literally. And that's game changing, I think.
And I got a taste of this last year. I helped a friend of mine launch a new company, and it was around indoor gardening. And we launched the product with all the things you do with a direct-to-consumer brand. And within 30 days, we set up our Facebook group. We probably, in retrospect, I would have liked to have done it before we launched, but we got to it when we got to it. These are the choices you make when you're a startup. But I pushed, actually, the other people in the organization did not want to do it. They're like, no, because they know that immediately they're going to have to do customer support through it and all this thing, and they want their life to be easy. But I said, no, this is critical, because even in the pre-sale standpoint, we're already getting a lot of activity, particularly on Facebook and Instagram. So let's set up a Facebook group. And amazingly enough, so it's a great product, sort of a product leader. It's really innovative, and it lends itself well to the type of people who want to be involved in community. We were able to get 50% of all people that bought the product. Now, this product was a high price product because there's a lot of technology, and it has a high yield and all these other things. But talk about, they were spending a minimum of $700 to get in on it. And a lot of people were spending $1,200. Okay. So it's like a high price point thing. 50% of all those people joined the Facebook group within the first month. And 50% of those posted within the first month. Right? So 25% of everyone who bought this thing were posting in the first 30 days. And actually it wound up growing to over 60% and over 60% for those two numbers. And that really enlightened me. And again, that was initially a one to many, but we tried to set it up as much more facilitative as opposed to, so we were the resource there. People were asking us questions and those types of things. But the
Yeah.
amazing thing was they started connecting with each other. And that's what we really started to think about. We say it's a great product, but what is that product for? Is it a product so that people have more nutritious food? Or is that product because we're creating an impetus to create a community where people can collaborate and support each other?
Yeah. And that's a really magical moment when you see that happen and see people. That's to me is the beauty of making anything, whether and watching the connections that form over it. I think NFTs do that in such a direct way. Whether you get the rights to a Bored Ape and now you're working with someone because they want to use your ape in their branding or write a story about it. I don't know. That's exciting.
Yeah, I think it really is. And I really just sort of going back to this idea now that you have the status idea really starting to be cemented. And that's okay. Now, I think some people are sort of like, oh, I don't want to be known. I don't want to do this just for status. Some people are fine with it. They're like, yes, of course. Right. But that's one of those intrinsic rewards that people are going to get. And I think they might go for the utility, but stay for the status. Others will go for the status and stay for the utility. That's all fine. And I think just
yeah, exactly.
Twitter is an example of how quickly this is being mainstreamed.
Yeah. And you've brought it out, like the different use cases, right? The art use case, the utility use case, the status use case. These are just the tip of the iceberg. Like people are going to figure out ways to use these things that we can't even conceive of it yet. And that, yeah,
let's do a transition though. Let's talk about that. So we've mentioned Bored Ape a couple times. There's a longer conversation to have about Bored Ape. So they'll be our top story at some point. So we'll talk about it. But they came out with the roadmap 2.0 a few days ago. And that's been heralded as really fairly significant. They have a good community. People are, just from the very basic thing of apes follow apes. But with that roadmap, they have some utility in there. So what are your thoughts on that being part of that community?
I think this is the beautiful thing about NFTs right here. They had a roadmap. They released it. The project was absurdly successful. I'm sure beyond their wildest expectations. And now they're adjusting. They have the flexibility to draft an entirely new roadmap because of that success and get feedback directly from the community. The stuff on this drawing they released for their 2.0 roadmap, it's stuff you heard the community talking about in Discord. It's that as a member of a community to see your influence taking shape this quickly is really powerful, and it engages you that much more in the community. You purchase this thing now has tremendous value. Your voice in that community has tremendous value. I think it just strengthens the loyalty to a pitch that the closest thing I can compare it to is seeing a band before they're big. Right? Exactly. Yeah. And you still love them when they become big, and you get excited when you see people discover them later. That's the closest. I'm pretty like I like sports, but I like watching football. I love the 49ers, but I don't wear 49ers gear because I don't know. I've always had a weird thing about like associating myself with a sort of tribe of people, but I've totally drinking the Kool-Aid on the NFT thing. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm actually a part of it. I'm not just sort of a poser.
You might be schizophrenic because you're part of so many tribes.
Yes, that is true. It's hard.
Okay, so a couple things on the roadmap that I think are interesting. The physical space, I think it's in LA. So I think that might already be open. It wasn't necessarily open when they launched it, but at least there's a space for that. They've got Ape Fest coming up, so they're doing the real in IRL type of utility. I know a few other NFT projects are doing that as well. What stood out to you?
I love I've been watching them. Another project I'm really up on is the Sandbox. And I love the way the Sandbox partners with all these various NFT projects. And when I saw Apes were getting involved with the sandbox. For me, those were two projects I was passionate about, and it was such a fun moment. And my anticipation is super high for whatever's happening there. Unfortunately, on the roadmap, it says Sandbox Miami 2035, which is a ways away from now.
Well, is it really that though? Or is it's going to be, they're going to create something in the sandbox. It's going to be this futuristic.
So that's,
area.
yeah. So I actually went online and started looking up the dates from the Planet of the Apes movie. Cause I think the thing they were doing in the sandbox was some Planet of the Apes thing. And one of the films does take place in 2035. Anyway, yeah, I think it's going to come sooner, but I love I love the playfulness of this whole map. Like I love the mystery and the fun of it. And I know it's not, there's probably people that want a very, give us dates and facts. But to me, this is the beauty of this space right now, is that it's still creative and malleable and evolving on the fly. I dig it.
Well, I think there's so much, there's trust built up, right? So they don't have to tell you every little detail because it's not transactional, right? It's like, hey, just look at these things we're going to be doing. I mean, the thing I'm probably most intrigued by is the redacted. I think that's great because I think you were the one who pointed out to me that how important the mint is for a lot of these generative projects, not knowing what you're going to get. The box of chocolates concept and how it gives you the opportunity for the thrill as opposed to just buying in the aftermarket.
Absolutely. And you were the one that discovered it. It's
created it. I part of the creation process.
Exactly. Too. Yeah. It's really cool. The redacted thing, anything that has blockchain game in it, I get immensely excited. I'm still waiting for something really, really cool to happen. I've dabbled with a few of the things that are out there, and there's been some interesting stuff, but I've yet to see like a killer use case. I think what the sandbox is doing is fantastic, and I'm really excited for when that launches publicly. But gaming and NFT, that's like the most obvious use case that has tons and tons of utility. And I'm excited to see it happen. And I'm excited to see indie developers get in on it. And really, that's another area. Like it's really hard. Developing a game takes so long, and it years and years and years, and it can be absolutely devastating. You're so dependent on these marketplaces to make the product successful. This is going to flip that on its head. And it's also going to, there's a lot of AAA games I love, but I don't know. I kind of want to see people stick it to the man and watch the small people have a chance to make something really unique.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think if we think about it too, it's almost like the App Store really opened up the gaming space because it was still complicated. There's still a little bit of a barrier to entry, but it wasn't. You didn't have to have the huge team to build the AAA game.
Absolutely.
You could actually go out and market and realize your vision at for a modest investment. And it gave you a way to monetize it.
Absolutely. And even, so I have made a bunch of games for iOS and Android, and mobile apps. I spent 10 years of my career making mobile apps. When I made Able Black, I actually believed this in my gut. And it wasn't a self-defeating thing. I just believed like no one's going to want to play this game. This is a game I'm making basically for me and one other person.
Yeah.
And it's not even really a game. No one's going to like it, but that's okay. I can build it, and I have time, and I'm going to, because I want to make this thing. And I was shocked. I made this on my own, like no help. It took me years to make it. No help from anyone. Not because I was proud. I just didn't have money to ask for help. So I made it myself. Apple featured it in the store, and it changed my life. Like it got so many eyeballs on it, and it wasn't life-changing money, but once it got paid and got so many views, and then I turned it free at one point because I just wanted to share it, and like hundreds of thousands of people play it. And this thing you made that you care immensely about, that you're deeply passionate about, resonated with someone in a way that's like really pure. Like it's a long game, like to get to the end. And then I put a little secret in there to say, message me with this thing, so I know you actually played it. When someone hits me up with that, like I know they just experienced this thing. That's really powerful, that exchange of ideas. NFTs feels like that to me for some reason.
That's right.
It feels like, yeah, it's exciting.
Well, and you, and so people know, like, you actually have like fan fiction built around Abel Black. I see the people in your Discord, trying to create their own storylines. And I think there's something interesting here about the storyline, and storyline being very important to games. You know, there are transactional games that are really more diversions, but you know, the ones with the big loyalty, I think, are story based. So, okay, let's.
I won't start on that because I'll keep talking.
Yeah,
about
well,
stories.
Let's carve that out sometime. We'll talk about games, and we'll get into that in more detail. You know, the other thing I saw, which I thought was sort of interesting, it might be the sign of the apocalypse. Burning Man is going to have NFTs on Sotheby's for a big drop. Any thoughts on that?
I have a confession to make. I've never been to Burning Man, and it feels like it's so up my alley, and I've not been, just because I haven't thought of it. I forget when it is. I have kids now. I just don't remember this stuff, but I do know a fair amount about it.
Sure.
And I think that the sort of subculture around it, of this community of makers and the inclusion stuff, feels very similar to NFTs right now. So even though it seems bizarre, it feels like a really good fit to me.
That is a community first organization.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And everybody's welcome, and you ask questions and you learn and you share information. And that's what's happening with NFTs right now. There's this weird stigma about blockchain and cryptocurrency, and you know, oh, it's fake money, it's a scam, it's a hustle, it's used for this or that. It's funny to me how different the NFT stuff actually is. There are absolutely cash grab projects, and there are people that are trying to scam people out of money, for sure. It's everywhere, and it's a problem. However, there is something absolutely pure about it that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think that this is a good thing. I think that the Burning Man stuff is really interesting. I hope that they do it in a way that is interesting and it works, so that people start exploring and thinking more about it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so you mentioned, so I think it's definitely interesting. I think it's good alignment. So I agree with that. But I want to like talk about something else, because you mentioned that a lot of cash grab. There were definitely a lot of those on Solana. Solana NFTs, you know, had their breakthrough in September. And some people are actually, if you actually look at the numbers, the recession in NFTs is mostly an ETH recession. It's an OpenSea recession. And if you actually add Solana, because Solana was much bigger, you know, it's actually not as big of a recession. It's still down a little bit overall. But a lot of those charts you see are actually just about OpenSea and Ethereum type things.
Yeah.
And Solana really broke out. And there were a lot of those cash grabs in there. I think that's fair to say. Not to say there aren't good projects, because there are. And I won't even say that's my area of expertise, but there are some things that I thought were really cool, and then some things less so. But Solana also had some big news recently, and they were down. And the whole idea is, geez, you're going to be more efficient. We're going to have no gas fees. But if you don't have on high SLA, what's going on? Maybe another argument for higher decentralization. What do you think?
I think it's simultaneously terrifying, because when you think of all the stuff blockchain is supposed to be, and you hear about this stuff, it's scary at first listen. But when you look at what actually happened and see that they had a response and they resolved it, this is like wholly new technology. This is how it works. You build something and it breaks along the way, and you fix it and make it better. And it's another sign, like you said earlier, that we are still incredibly early, and things like this are going to continue to happen, and some are going to be devastating. but every time it happens, it's massive opportunity to not just improve, but also for other folks to get in and to yeah, there's just opportunity. Yeah, it doesn't worry me. It doesn't upset me. I think it's just part of making stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's the best thing that could have happened to them. So first of all, based on some of the things that I've looked at around this, I believe that it crashed when they hit 400,000 transactions a second. Think about that. 400,000 transactions a second.
Yeah.
And so they weren't ready for that. And there were probably, like most of these things, I've been involved in these before as well. Scalability is a bitch. That it's probably multiple things that happened. It was stress on the system because, and maybe they had planned for this type of scale even, but there were two other things that they didn't realize were interdependencies, or they cropped up, or there was an error made in the configuration somewhere. And so they were down and they fixed it. But I think, first of all, what a great marker for them that they hit 400,000 transactions a second. So, I mean, this was not a breakout project a year ago, right? So they've come a long way, and they've really, I think in many ways, jumped past a lot of these other chain alternatives, layer ones. The other thing about it is say, wow, what publicity they got. Now, people think it's like bad publicity, but very few people knew. You'd have to be sort of on the inside to know Solana. You have to pay attention to the space. And I think a lot of people knew what it was, or maybe had heard of it, but this gave them a reason to learn a little bit more.
Absolutely.
They did great recovery, as you said. So now they have this reputation that, hey, if something does go wrong, they're going to fix it. They're going to work as hard as they have to make it right. So they're building reputation there. They took a hit financially, but they've actually had a little bit of a bounce back already. So I think a lot of this is like, they're going to have a problem at some point. Much better to have it early in your life cycle, prove yourself, than to have it a year from now when there's a bunch of mission critical stuff running on it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Who knows what the trajectory that thing was on was insane. And like I said, this is an opportunity. If you're watching this and you're research Solana, you might find that it's something you want to look more at. That's not financial advice. Just you learn about stuff and you check it out and see what's what. Yeah, I think of the SpaceX videos and watching spaceships blow up. Like, this is how you build stuff. Like, it never works the first time. You build something and you know that there's a good chance that something could go sideways. And this is where we're at. And the risk from if you're putting money into something like this, you know that that's a risk, and that's why the potential upside is so massive. Yeah,
and let's face it. I mean, this is not what they faced. Is not at the level of significance of what Ethereum faced when they had the DAO fiasco.
Exactly. And to your point, this is based on a milestone, right? They 400,000 transactions. This is crazy. Like, this is such a massive achievement.
It wasn't a security mistake.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's just sort of the table stakes. And credit to Ethereum, like, whether you liked how they approached it or not, they got things back on track, and really important. Okay, so Solana, I think people will maybe remember it, but it's like a blip on the radar. I don't think it's going to do much to slow that down, particularly when they get the bounce back. It's going to, people are going to be like, oh yeah, now I can trust that. I know what happens. Okay, so we have this other thing in here on our list. Vive's NFT deal with MGM around the James Bond NFTs. So I'll start this one off. I think this is really interesting. More studios. So Marvel, sort of obvious, DC, sort of obvious. There's a lot of people thinking about that space who come from animation, coming from this real world, this fictional real world, right? Idea, thinking about a way to take advantage of the interest in this space and take advantage of an interest in what is the great movie franchises of all time. And it wasn't what I was expecting, like, Star Wars, certainly, you could say Pixar, right? So, but Star Wars seems obvious. Star Trek seems obvious. Like, a lot of people in the industry really love those things. But when I saw James Bond, I was like, that's kind of interesting. And we'll see if that brand is as
Yeah.
strong as it was. But I think there's going to be a lot of people, particularly who are maybe a little bit older and have a lot of nostalgia around that, and they might have actually a little bit more ETH to spend, are going to be in on that.
Yeah, I both love and hate this because I've been on the side of licensing deals, and
All
usually
right.
it's someone licenses something because they think the name recognition is going to do all the work for them, and it feels tacked on. And but at the same time, I love that it's great that there's a massive. This again spreads awareness about this, which I think is good. I also hold out hope that they do something really cool here. I would love, I mean, spy movies, right? Like, I would love if these NFTs, depending on how you mint it, you can hide information to just the person who holds the wallet.
Uh-huh.
If I held this and somehow it gave me some little piece of information that related to the movie, or some secret code that I could enter in a site somewhere and get like some clip, somehow like enhance the story or extend the new upcoming film in a little bit, I think would be really
How
cool.
about a game offshoot, right? So you have
A
to play,
game, yeah,
you can play as Spectre, you can play as James Bond, you can play as
yeah.
CIA. I mean, these are all
I
different
mean, yeah,
characters.
one of the all-time, for a long time, movie video games were horrible until around the late 90s when GoldenEye came out for the N64 and was so freaking fantastic and introduced a whole bunch of people to first-person shooters. Yes, I would love that. That's exciting to think about.
I'm hoping they'll have, at least some of them will be GIFs, which will have
Mhm.
the little circle, the shot, and the blood coming over it. So you'll see it, but
That
maybe
would be
twice a
cool. Yeah,
day. Like which one?
yeah,
One of the projects does that, like twice a day. The art changes. I don't
yeah,
remember which
yeah. I
one that
think
is.
async does that. The async platform has a bunch of projects like that that change.
Yeah, it's like my NFT is 1137. So at 1137, it goes crazy for like a minute.
Yeah,
And
I love that stuff. That's
so clever.
yeah.
Okay, so I think this is really interesting. I think this is going to introduce it to more folks. My guess
Mhm.
is that this will be more. I want to say art, but so I guess that would be correct. I really think of it more along the lines of the way Raoul Paul talks about this, and he talks about NFTs are an opportunity to own a piece of culture. And I think some
That's
people do
interesting.
in
Yeah.
their portfolio, they want to own a piece of culture. And if you grow up with James Bond, like I did, I don't know that I don't think I will pursue this. I think I'm more interested in other things around community, and I can't imagine
Yeah.
MGM building a big community. Uh, but I can see why people, and with my experience and nostalgia, would love to own a piece of that culture.
Yeah, and movie collectibles is a huge thing, right? So if they treat it with that kind of regard, I think that that could be a thing too. Even a cell of, I know everything's shot digitally, but a cell of the original film or something would be cool. Anyway, or a single
Yeah.
frame
Okay.
rather.
Yeah. Or and like, what I'd love to see, anyone who holds those, like they do around the country. I mean, when we all get back together in real life, they
Mhm.
hold little parties and they get to like screen it the night before it goes live.
Yeah,
So how cool would that be? So like you're already
yeah,
into this, and then like there's enough people that you couldn't do it all in one theater in one place, and maybe you wouldn't want to anyway. But maybe that's like 50 watch parties. Um,
yeah,
so they can send
yeah.
the
This
check
should.
to. I'm just going to tell MGM where to send the check to energy. Okay, great. Let's move on to V Friends, another auction.
Yeah,
Christie's. You have a little attachment to this.
I do. Yeah.
Talk about it.
I got so Gary Vaynerchuk, that this is his NFT project. He announced it I forget when he first announced it, but they
April.
launched May 5th. And I think it was actually delayed a few days
It
because he
was
had some
supposed to
some
launch May 5th.
hiccups.
I think the
Yeah.
date
I
was
think it
May
ended up being
11th.
the 8th or something.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, it was
11th. Yeah, that's
longer,
right.
but yes.
Around there. Yeah. I've been following him for a long time just because I liked his style. I know lots of people can't stand him. Some people love him. Um, he was born the exact same year as me, has a lot of the same interests. Grew up watching wrestling and cartoons, and uh, was a terrible student. A lot of his experience matched up with mine. So I always thought he was a fun person to listen to for that reason. And I know he hustles. And when he says something, he usually backs it up. And when he and he's got good instincts about what's emerging platforms, right? And this, when he announced this, thankfully I was in a position where I had some coin to work with, because these were not cheap. I think the floor price on the cheapest one was 0.5 ETH, and ETH was around, this was at like the peak. ETH was
Yeah, it
close
was
to
over
4.
4,000.
Yeah.
And
So
gas,
it was not
gas at a good
insignificant.
time then was 350, I think. That was
Yeah,
like
it was
cheap
crazy.
gas.
It was crazy. But I felt in my gut, if NFTs are going to work, these ones are going to work as good or better than any other NFT. And I love the utility thing he rolled out of the gate. So VCon, you get access to VCon. Yeah. I'll set that aside because I know that's another topic.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure we'll do a show on because Gary Vaynerchuk is so innovative. He's got this manic energy. He's very creative, and he just wants to do it all, right? And he really wants this to be his stamp. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting things there. But give people a little bit of background. So VCon, he basically said these are utility tokens. There's a bunch of different
tokens.
ones.
You get access into VCon, and then some of the other ones give you other types of access. In addition to that, the thing he keeps saying that really resonated with me is he wants to be Disney, and if he falls short, he wants to be Scooby-Doo. And I think that's such a massive, awesome aspiration. I love hearing about people that aim super big. It's exciting to me, and the fact that, to me, that the IP potential of these ridiculous drawings was more exciting than I love the idea of going to VCon, but the IP aspect really got me going. And so I had the intention of buying 1 or 2. I ended up buying like 14 of these things. I went a little nuts, and I'm glad I did. I actually was clicking to buy as many as I could till the last ones ran out. He's now doing this auction, right? So these are, if you haven't seen these drawings, I'm sure anyone listening to this has probably seen these. He drew them himself. They're based on values he has: tremendous tiger, gratitude gorilla, empathy elephant. They're not good drawings. They're endearing.
They're charming.
Yes, they're charming and endearing, and the thought is cool, and his excitement about them is neat. But he admits, like, these are sort of lousy drawings that I hope to have great artwork done from, and then build IP around it. And even that is bold, like starting with such a like sketch concept and wanting to elevate it to Mickey Mouse is, I love it. And so 5 of these drawings are going to be auctioned at Christie's on, it's October 1st. I thought it was October 10th. It's October 1st at 10 a.m. For the first lot. And so it's not the NFTs, it's the original drawings that made the NFTs. And that's interesting, I think, because it's just cool. It's kind of, everyone's been selling NFTs. This is kind of a backward way to do it. They started as NFTs, and now he's selling the artwork. It's just a neat idea. And I'm excited because I'm curious to see if they go for more than the spectacular versions, the NFT versions, because that would be wild if the drawing sold for less than the value of the NFT. That would it's a
good story regardless.
Yeah. And it would make a lot of our assumptions kind of crazy, right? Like if the digital replica of the drawing is worth more than the drawing, why? What does that mean? I think it would create a lot of great conversations. I'm excited about it. He announced this. He made a big deal about it, which I think it's a giant deal. Christie's is not like some,
they're assuming millions.
Exactly. Like, you have to be pretty, like, to get in here it's a big deal. And the fact that this all happened in a few months is wild, right? Yes. I guess 5 months, but so.
Well, and it follows. I mean, they just had this success with Bored Ape, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've seen Punks.
Yeah.
So
it's sort of, again, it's credibility, right? Like, it's lending credibility to this whole thing. Yeah. He announced it. There was actually a little bit of, I think, some of the reaction. Prices for VFans were pumping, and then when he announced this, they dipped a little. And I think part of that is just the fever people are in right now, where they're just expecting stuff to just.
Well, it also happened. It also happened at a time where people were sort of saying, "Hey, we're in an NFT recession."
Yeah.
Um, so, they were like, "Oh, it's sort of, this idea of buying the rumor, selling the news." It got up to, what was the floor? 23, 22 ETH just for the basic
Yeah.
ones. And so now I just pulled it up. They're 17, basically, a little, high 16.
Yep.
So that's still a lot of money for this thing that basically at its
It's crazy.
base gets you access to 3 conferences over 3 years. You still have to pay your travel there. You still have to pay all your local expenses. You
Hmm.
just to get to go into this thing that you hope is going to be, essentially
Yeah.
an annual conference that's just better than Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's crazy. It's not, I've been to a lot of conferences and I've gotten like the platinum South by Southwest badge.
Uh-huh.
This is a lot of money compared to that. So that clearly people are finding something else in it, right? It's more than just conference access.
Well, right, yeah,
I
right
think
now it would be like paying 20 grand per event. So it's really more
yes,
than that. It's like, I mean, we got other things by being part of that. We got an Avastars.
yeah,
I know a bunch of people got, didn't you get something this week?
yeah, yeah. So
I
that
didn't get it.
that whole project he's doing is awesome.
The launch program.
Yeah, and this is the thing you were talking about earlier, is getting one of those utilities you identified was the things you get from holding an NFT. And we're seeing this happen with VeeFriends, with Bored Apes and the serums. Space
Yes.
Punks just did it with the space dinos. That's powerful. It's a good incentive to hold on to these NFTs because you keep getting stuff.
That's right. Well, that's a
Yeah.
perfect example. So, like, just one of the other things we want to talk about briefly was crypto dads. So, what we're going to hear about, and I'm sure they're going to be back on as a topic here. I'm fortunate enough to have a couple crypto dads. I did not make the mint, but I bought them immediately aftermarket. We'll talk about that another time. But that's another example. They're going to have crypto moms coming out. If you own a crypto dad, you're going to have an opportunity to pre-mint a crypto mom. So, to the extent that you believe in the project, this is one of the benefits, right? So and what does that do, right? That makes you feel better for being up front. You have this other asset. You can buy it, maybe you sell it, and maybe it covers the cost of getting into your first crypto dad. But maybe you hold it and it makes you that much more tied to the community. And oh, by the way, if you have a crypto mom, crypto dad, or actually if you just have any two crypto dads, you're going to have crypto tots coming up. So again, what's that going to do? Draw you more to the community.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting. Yeah, and it's awesome. And it's not something you can do with anything else really in the way you can do it with NFT. And again, I think we're just scratching the surface. Like, these are very obvious things, right? Someone's going to figure out another way to do this. It'll change everything. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and so Crypto Dads had some news coming up. So first of all, they revealed the initial sketches for some of the crypto moms, which are not actually what I was expecting. I like it. It's, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, you should look it up. It's really Bob's Burger in style art, which isn't like, it's not as involved as some of the art we're seeing in NFTs, but it's cool because it's got this whole vibe. I think it's very welcoming. You've got the founders, they dox themselves, right? So they're not anonymous. They've told everybody who they are. They're out there in the community. They have this program. But the other thing that they're doing is they've really been really active. So they immediately gave money to a men's health charity. Shortly after the drop, I think it was within 10 days, they announced crypto moms shortly afterwards. So those are things that are having an immediate impact. Plus, they're working on a beer deal. I don't think that one's done yet, but they have a whiskey deal. So they're going to do a small run of whiskey, which is going to be exclusive access. They actually have, I'm wearing a Crypto Dad shirt. If you have to hold in one of the NFTs in order to be able to get the shirt. So it's not just anybody can buy them. They're going to do a limited run of an energy drink, which I believe that agreement's already in place. And they have indicated, but they haven't given much detail. They're talking to some studios or some screenwriters about potentially creating a series out of that. And if they do create a series out of that, they expect to take only characters from the collection, and anybody who is going to be a character, they recruit a character, they have to agree to it. And if they do agree to it, they will be compensated for the use of their character.
It's
I mean,
awesome.
no
Yeah.
wonder this thing sort of popped really quickly. And
Hmm.
again, we didn't say this at the top. We should say this. Neither of us are registered financial advisors. We are not financial advisors of any kind in any country. We'll just say, do your own research. I sort of hate hearing
Yes.
that, but we're going to say that this is not financial advice, but we're telling you what we have conviction in because we think they're great projects. And the outcome of a great project is you get a lot of really good stuff. You get this community and you're going to have more value. So if you do hold multiples of them at some point, maybe you're able to do that. But if you don't have too many, you're going to sell. You might feel good for a few minutes, but then you're not going to be associated with the project anymore. So keep that in mind too.
Yes.
Okay. So crypto ads, I'm sure we'll talk about again.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about the Sandbox land sale and Snoop Dogg today, or do you want to leave that to another week?
We could do a whole nother week on the Sandbox because if I start talking about that, I'm not going to stop.
Okay. Yeah. Sandbox is,
that's
definitely true. Sandbox is really interesting. One of the many metavi. We'll talk about,
yeah, we should just do a whole metaverse episode.
Definitions of metaverse, right? But Sandbox will just say, Snoop Dogg did an event there, sort of draw more attention to that. But that's like probably the smallest thing that happened there over the last week. So pretty exciting. We'll come back to that. All right. So as we wrap up, we've got a couple more things. The first thing we want to talk about is what we're buying. So we've talked about a few things about what we hold. What have you been buying lately so people get a sense of what you think's interesting?
Yeah, I've been going through like my evolution of collecting NFTs has changed from after VFriends, I got really excited about finding projects pre-mint and I did that a little bit. But more recently, I've been getting really excited about projects that are just minted and kind of seeing what they're doing and how the community is responding. And I tend to choose stuff largely based on gut, which is probably not a fantastic way to do it. But I find that like if something for some reason resonates with me, some aspect of it, I have a immediate reaction to it that's interesting. I then kind of research it. I don't totally shoot from the hip, but usually it's the art style. If I notice the art style is a little bit different, and I think because of my background in arts, I can spot if it's not just a knockoff.
Right.
Anyway, so using that kind of criteria, World of Women is still one I'm huge on. I haven't bought any recently, but as soon as I saw that project, I missed the mint. I bought a bunch of them. I just love the artwork, the sort of flat vector color artwork. I thought it was really cool. The fact that the artist is a woman, it's celebrating women. Historically, we just went through a period where in tech, like women weren't necessarily well represented. It's neat that we're starting out the NFT thing with a diverse group of people that are able to do projects. So I think it's worth celebrating that, especially since it's fantastic artwork. I also thought the way they did stuff with the clubs, I won't go into it, but if you check out their site and look at their clubs, basically if you own certain NFTs with accessories, you get benefits. Also, some of the collabs they're doing with other female artists that are inspired by their World of Women. It's the whole thing. I just dig it. I love those. I've been telling everyone that will listen about those and how excited I am about them. They're also doing a series 2 coming up. That project's doing very well, in my opinion. I think it's above 3 ETH today. It was at like 3.4 at one point. When I got them, they were like 0.1, and they had been sitting there for a little while.
That was when Gary started pumping it.
Yeah, Gary mentioned it. Luckily, I found it. I think right before he mentioned it that morning, I think I found it, or the previous night, I found it. Luckily, because after he pumped it, it started to go up a little. But even still, it's gone bananas since then. I love that project. Also, Crypto Dads that we talked about. I really like those. You mentioned the art style. I dig it. The guys just seem legit. They like you said, they doxed themselves. They donated some stuff. They just seem like people that want to do this and they're excited about it. And I love that. I love that NFTs have become this thing where you can say, I have a really neat idea I'm passionate about. And if you believe in me, you can come along for this ride and maybe we'll all benefit from it and we can all collaborate together. That's super cool. So yeah, that was another one. Those are probably the two biggest that I've been excited about. There's been a bunch of others in addition to those, but I'll let you go. And then if we have time, we can come back around and I can.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll talk about buying, and we're coming up on an hour here. So I think we'll probably bring it to a close, but yeah, World of Women's very interesting. And the other thing I like about them is there's over 4,000 owners of World of Women out of 10,000. Not quite as high as Crypto Dads. Crypto Dads is probably the highest I've seen. But that's good. And you've got a lot of people. There's some people who own multiples, but there's a lot of people who are just there because they want to be part of that community. We'll talk about that another time. So what am I buying? So I'll just talk about one thing. I guess I bought a mutant ape, and that's the most I've spent. So that's not cheap. But I bought a floor ape. I felt like a floor sweeper. But I'll tell you why I did buy it. I'd basically seen this whole thing. My first NFT was VFriends, and I wound up buying 3. I meant to buy 2. I wound up by accident buying 3. It's the best thing that could have happened to me. And then I wasn't really thinking that I was going to buy other NFTs. I remember like sort of getting involved in the space a little bit, looking at Bored Ape like early on, and thinking, oh yeah, maybe I'll come back to that, because I hadn't really grokked what it was going to be, right? And so, that's okay. It's a journey, right? But I was just so impressed with what Bored Ape was doing. I wanted to be part of the project, particularly. So I started thinking about, oh, this would be cool, but like, I just not going to spend that much. And then a friend of mine really wanted to be in. His ETH was being held by Coinbase, or his buy-in was being held by Coinbase for some reason. He's like a 5-day hold. I don't know what he did. He did something wrong, probably, or maybe it's just Coinbase. We'll blame it on Coinbase. Yeah. And he's just like, hey, the floor is really low. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And I said, well, okay, I can do it. Like someone I know. So I was like, yeah, I have it. It's like, this is designated for something else, but I have it. So I was like, which one do you want? And so I bought it for him. And so it's in my wallet. And he's like, you just hold it until I have the cash, because I don't want it in my wallet until I've actually paid for it. He's like, okay, fine. So I just have it in there and I'm not paying any attention to it, right? Except for like, you look at your wallet and you're like, you can't not pay attention. You're like, I have this ape in here. And so what does this mean? So I'm just like looking what's going on. And then it's like, you know what? It's such an important project. And this is sort of the backdoor entry to the project. It's like, I guess, we have Kennel Club as well as another backdoor, but Mutant Ape's sort of a way, like an affordable way maybe to get in. Is that affordable?
Yeah.
Not really, but it's more affordable. And so I just started looking at the floor for a couple of days, and I was like, just went ahead and I bought one. And so I actually bought it before I transferred to him. So, I've had an ape for a while now. And I think I really have this belief that there are certain projects, it's going to be asymmetric in terms of the activity. I've bought a lot of NFTs over the last 8 weeks. I assume most of them are not, those communities are going to dissolve. Some of the ones that I wasn't as hot on are actually doing okay. And then some of the ones that I was hot on are not doing well. So, but I just felt like that's a project I want exposure to. I want access to that project in some way.
Yeah, we're starting to see which ones are going to be historical, right? Like you can, obviously no one knows for sure, but you get a sense of what they are. And we should do an episode on that too.
I have 5. There are 5 projects that matter this year that will be remembered for a long time to come.
Let's hear it. Actually, I want to hear.
No. That's a teaser.
You're going to
come back next week, and we will tell you the 5
Yeah,
projects.
because I'm going to get mine together too. We should actually not tell each other and then and then share them at the same time.
That's the focus. That's the focus. It's going to be a special one. We're going to do a countdown. Cool. And if we get enough people to watch, we'll do a vote. That'll be fun. Okay. Immediate fan engagement. I mean, all 3 people who watch this. I think I'm hoping that, this is the first one. So it's always, it's always a start. Scott and I know each other already. So you probably figured that out. But, this is the first time we've ever podcasted together. we're learning this, but okay. So we have a couple of projects we just talked about. That's great. I think we'll try to do that every week. Talk to people about what we're buying, what we're interested in, sort of beyond the news, but what we're holding in our wallet, and what we are going to be long-term on, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So any calls to action that you have, anything you want to point people to who are watching episode number 1? Because this one, it's episode number 1. A lot of people are going to watch this.
Yeah. If you give a good tip now, someone could bring it back and say, holy moly.
You guys, if you want, we talked about Able Black earlier. We're going to do a session probably on Able Black at some point. You should go to iOS. I think it's an Android too, correct? You're in the Google Play?
Android and iOS. Yeah.
Check out Able Black. Very cool. We'll talk about Rally at some point too.
Cool.
We both have some exposure to that, but not today. And I'm going to tell you guys something. So this is the first episode, but this isn't the only thing we have. There's other people who are doing these types of things, but we have a Discord that we've set up, and there's just a few people in there right now because it's really just a few people. It's not even all our friends. So if you go to bit.ly, you guys know how to do bit.ly, bit.ly/Niftorious, Niftorious, you can get into the Discord, and we're going to probably close that off in a little bit. But anybody who's looking at it right now, and maybe I'll just leave this one open. If everyone discovers the first episode of our live stream, we'll do that. And then also check out niftorious.com. That's a place where we're going to publish lots of news and data. So I'm really interested in that. I've done that in the past. And one of the things we want to do is we want to help people become better at this and be successful collectors and get involved in what they want to. And so what we're going to do is we're going to provide lots of resources in addition to the community to help everybody out.
Yes. Talking about it is a huge deal. That was a game changer for me. Getting in a chat and talking with people about what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Led to me making a lot of.
We'll talk about NFT mystics at some point too. That's like a whole different thing, which is amazing.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's all good stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So that's it. I hope you become a member of the Niftorious community. Please, everyone, come over. We have lots of fun things planned. I really think people are going to like it. I'm excited about it. I'm so jazzed about this. It's so fun. But everybody who watched today, out there over the next week, happy hunting.